Hi, my name is Ashley Catapano. I'm the Director of Workers' Comp and Industrial Services at Ivy Rehab Physical Therapy. I am a physical therapist as well. Work conditioning program is actually a form of physical therapy. It helps employees return to work by focusing on improving not only their traditional PT goals, such as muscular performance, range of motion, strength, and flexibility, but it also incorporates job simulation and improving their cardiovascular and pulmonary abilities to align with those essential job demands. So one of the other biggest differences between the two therapies is that it lasts longer. So typically we will perform it for a longer duration where it's around 2.5 to 4 hours. And we'll also perform it more frequently, moving that from that traditional 3 times a week for 4 weeks into a 3 to 5 up to 5 days a week over that 2 to 4 weeks. Again, it also emphasizes on job simulation. So this is specifically tailored to the injured worker's employer and their custom goals. And what we're essentially trying to do is just improve that overall level of function. When creating a return to work plan of care, it's essential for the PT or OT to understand the injured worker's job description. Often this information isn't readily available, so the clinician can utilize several different resources, including nurse case managers or a direct conversation with the employer. They can also leverage the occupational dictionary of job titles or just have a direct discussion with the employee to gather the insights about what their typical workday looks like. We want to make sure that in our plan of care, we're encompassing both material and non-material handling activities, looking at positional tolerances, body mechanics, lifting mechanisms, and then also just assessing if there's any type of special equipment that they would need to wear during that workday so that we can simulate those activities as much as possible. So to facilitate a smooth transition, physical therapists will customize the job simulation circuit that provides, again, job coaching, improving body mechanics, and really looking to get that employee to engage in those activities in a safe manner, but also appropriate to their work demands. Our goal as a physical therapist is to ensure that we're replicating that work environment as closely as possible. And again, through that job simulation, we really want to mimic those tests. The program itself is self-paced and it allows the employees to progressively increase their targets and work towards their individual goals. And also the physical therapist should be performing routine assessments to not only monitor their process, but also make the necessary adjustments to the program so we can continue down to working towards our overall goal of getting them back to work. So again, the overall purpose of this program is really to make sure that we're focusing on injury prevention and positioning them for success to have that full recovery from their job. So not only are we looking at that physical component, we're also looking at that mental component and making sure that they have that confidence and they're ready to go to work and meet that standard 8-hour day. It's extremely important, again, for us to incorporate that work simulation as closely as possible. It's always good to reach out to the employer if there's any questions, or maybe they've been with their organization for a while, so there's been a change in their job title, but that information doesn't always translate. So for me in the clinic, what I want to do is, again, just make sure that whatever activity they're doing, I'm focusing on how long they would have to do it. And if they're doing some type of material task, is that poundage equal to what they would need to be doing in their workday? So just by those things, and then providing the natural coaching for body mechanics and those positional changes is really going to set that person up for success. We typically call this industrial athlete, and it's just like treating somebody in the sports realm. We want to make sure we're giving them a high level of care, quality care, and just making sure that everything is aligned with those essential job demands. The primary challenge faced by injured workers is the emotional and psychological toll of recovering from an injury. I think too often we see that the concerns regarding the recovering from their injury. So they're looking at it as, how severe is my injury? Am I getting the adequate services I should be getting? how many days am I going to be out of work, especially if I'm providing for my family? What type of toll is that going to take on me emotionally and also causing strain on the rest of my family? I would also see that the injured worker sometimes is concerned about if their boss or any of their teammates or coworkers are going to be annoyed that they're out of work or frustrated that they have to cover those shifts. So a lot of times I think that's a little, they're feeling it more and internalizing it. So sometimes that also could impact their care. So they're just worried about how their absence is essentially going to affect others and what is that going to do for them long term. I think a secondary concern that we typically see in the field is that a lot of times there's a really high level of frustration where injured workers start to feel that they get lost in the system. So I think sometimes it may take time from the day that they had their injury to get in to see a medical provider, to get a prescription or receive authorization to get those treatments. And sometimes that feeling that their case is not being monitored or progressed can make them feel a little lost. So essentially what we want to do is we want to make sure that we have a high level of engaging them back into the system. Once we do that, I think that positions everyone for success and also just helps to start to develop that level of buy-in so that they know and understand, hey, this is normal what you're feeling. Here's how we're going to work through it. We're a team and we're going to get through this together. And then the last piece of that as well is that there could also be some frustration where when they are going to physical therapy or even if it's work conditioning, if they're starting to hit a plateau. So it's really important that we're providing a program that is changing, we're assessing it, we're coaching and really showcasing to them how they're going to get to their goal. So once we really make that change from a 60-minute program to a 2.5-hour program and we get to know them a lot better, we'll start to see that naturally improve. When considering a candidate for work conditioning, several factors will come into play. The first thing that I'll typically look at is what their physical demand level is. So essentially what that means is what category is their work? Is it going to be a sedentary job, light, medium, heavy, very heavy? And again, what do they have to do within that day-to-day basis? Typically what I'll do is I'll also look at the injury from a diagnosis standpoint. Are they moving from acute where their swelling is going down? Are they even appropriate to move into this threshold? So we'll start to see this a lot with post-op patients. The most important thing with them is that they need to be cleared for strength training. So sometimes when we can make that change too is also just dependent on the diagnosis. The next thing I'll really look at too is how long can they tolerate an exercise program? Are they getting close to about 60 minutes? If they are, then that would probably be somebody who would be good to make that transition. Are they back at work all full-time, full duty? Are they still having some type of soreness or pain? Can we work with the employee to transition them into work conditioning to still work on those goals? And then some of the other things that I'll notice clinically is if I have a person that is plateauing in their traditional care, it may make sense to work on the job simulation and improving their conditioning. And then the last piece on there too is if they're meeting about 50% of their job batch. So again, for me as a physical therapist, my overall goal is to get them back to work, full-time, full duty, whatever their previous work status was to meet those goals. So essentially what I want to do is if I start to identify a candidate while going through this process, I want to make sure that I'm informing all of the stakeholders. So that would involve reaching out to the physician because we would need to have a prescription for this process, speaking with a nurse case manager if there is one involved in the case or an adjuster to ensure that we have authorization as well. But really identifying that person is that key step. And then once we make that transition, we start to see again the confidence come back and that person really have a nice steadily progression of a strong return to work program.